So first of all, I just want to start off by welcoming everybody who's joining us today. This is the Illinois Fire Safety Alliance's Safety Series program, Bonfires, Firepits, and Grilling, and we are supported by JC Restoration. The Illinois Fire Safety Alliance, or IFSA, is a nonprofit organization dedicated to fire safety and burn prevention education across the state of Illinois. We also provide support programs to both children and adults who've been impacted by burn-related injuries. My name is Riley Anderson. I'm the program coordinator here at the Illinois Fire Safety Alliance, and I'm going to be moderating today's session. We expect today's session to last around 20 minutes. We're not going to worry too much about the timeline, but we're going to be talking about bonfires, fire pits, and grilling so that we can all head into the new summer season safely. Today, we are joined by a fire safety expert, Mike Schnapper, and a special guest.
Hi, how are you doing? Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much for joining us. And they are joining us all the way from the Rockford Fire Department. So we really appreciate you guys being here and sharing all of your wisdom with us. So I'm going to go ahead. We have a list of general questions prepared for you, Mike. And then if you want to add anything on, please feel free. If anybody watching on the live stream has a specific question that they want to address, please go ahead and throw it into the chat, the comment section on the live stream. If we aren't able to answer your question here live in our conversation, we will make sure that we at the very least answer you in writing on Facebook. So without further ado, let's get into some questions. I'll go ahead and start with something easy for you. Can you just tell us some basic general grill safety tips? If I'm new, I'm going to go buy my first grill. What tips would you give me?
Well, first of all, obviously this season is great for grilling. When the weather gets warm, we want to have burgers, hot dogs, ribs, whatever we can make outside. We just want to make sure we do that safely. One of the things that we're doing is when we're outside, maybe at larger family gatherings, there might be lots of kids around. You want to make sure you maintain about a 3-foot kid safe area around whatever cooking implements you'd be using. So that means, that doesn't mean that kids aren't allowed in there, but they're not allowed in there without direct adult supervision. We see lots of burn injuries on kids as a result of getting too close to grills. And it would be the same kind of rules that you would have inside. Also, you want to make sure that anything you're cooking with is away from anything combustible, away from anything like anywhere anyone would be living. You want to make sure you're not cooking underneath a deck or a balcony or anything like that. Because the last thing you want to do is take a small fire that's meant for cooking and make it into a fire that destroys property. We also want to make sure that when we're cooking with things like charcoal, that we are not going too heavy on the lighter fluid. And as the lighter fluid burns off and the coals start heating, don't add any more lighter fluid. I understand people want to get that thing going real hot, but when you do, you always run the risk of starting, again, a larger fire that you can't control. Make sure that if you're using a larger cooking fire, that there is something nearby that you can use to extinguish the fire, like a hose or something like that. Just like inside you would want to do with an extinguisher, should the fire get out of control. Also, just like cooking inside, never leave food unattended while you're cooking it. We can't emphasize that enough. The odds of something getting out of control, again, much lower if someone's paying attention to what's going on, staying on top of things. Also, once you buy a grill, just cooking it isn't enough to clean it. You have to actually take it apart, scrub the insides every now and again to make sure there isn't a bunch of gunk accumulating that's going to, again, make one of those fires that we can't control well.
Awesome. That's super helpful. I learned something new there. Thank you. So you touched on charcoal grills. Is there any specific safety advice you'd give if we're using a gas grill?
Sure. You want to make sure that if you're using those propane tanks, that they're completely disconnected if you're putting your grill inside. You obviously don't want that grill starting when it's inside your garage or inside your house or anything like that. I personally use a natural gas grill at home. You want to make sure that if you're doing that, you have inspected the line, that everything is, again, unobstructed from any kinks, any leaks, anything like that. Also, again, just like anything else, keep your eye on it. Once you got it going, the best way to stop something if it goes wrong is to be able to shut off the gas right at the source and avoid it from spreading into the grill or beyond.
Okay, thank you. So before we get into any specific types of outdoor burning, what general outdoor burning safety tips would you advise?
Well, one of the first things that we recommend you do is you check with your local jurisdiction and see what kind of outdoor burning is permitted. For example, in the city of Rockford, we don't allow burning without a permit at all. Very specific rules involving cooking fires, 2 foot by 2 foot by 2 foot specific for cooking purposes. Other than that, you need to get permitting. We only do it between the hours of 7 a.m. and 11 p.m. So again, we want to make sure that these things are done within your local jurisdiction. So they may vary from area to area, so make sure that you're checking with your local fire department first. If you do end up in an area where things are allowed, make sure you're using dry wood that has been seasoned for at least 6 months. You're not burning any plastics, anything that could give off toxic fumes, any kind of rubber materials, yard waste, anything like that. Very specific wood for the purposes of making an outdoor fire. If it's just like a campfire, you want to make sure that it's at least 25 feet away from any structure that is flammable. And if it's a bonfire, 50 feet from any structure. And you want to make sure, again, we have something nearby that we can use to extinguish it, like a bucket of water, like a hose. You want to make sure that the area around that, again, that is free from anything that could catch fire, anything that could cause a bigger problem. And again, we want to maintain that 3-foot kid safe zone. If we are burning the fire, do not use gasoline or any flammable liquids to start it or to relight it. We want to make sure we're just burning the wood. Use kindling, crumpled up paper, things like that. What we don't want to do is take what should be a small fun fire and turn into a big out of control fire that the fire department needs to respond to.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you did touch there on bonfires a little bit, especially in regards to the preferred materials that you're burning. Are there any other tips towards bonfire safety that you'd like to touch on?
Yeah, obviously bonfires are great when the weather's right. You see them typically in rural areas, but you want to make sure that wherever you're burning, you have plenty of distance between you and anything that could catch. Check for overhead stuff like trees, wires. You don't want to do any damage to any structural things that could be damaged by flame. Also, again, I can't stress this enough. Always have something nearby that you can use to extinguish it, and never leave any fire, whether it's for cooking, camping, or bonfire purposes. Never leave it unattended. Always have somebody staying on top of it and ready to go. And again, it's not saying you can't have children help in the building of these fires, but make sure if they do, it's under very strict, very close adult supervision.
Absolutely. Thank you. And we did get a question on the live stream chat.
Sure.
Diane was wondering, is it safe to have a gas grill on a wooden deck?
I would prefer that you didn't, particularly if there's something overhanging, if it's a wide open deck. And again, you can observe those kind of rules that we were talking about earlier, where you have your safe distance from the structure itself, from the side of the structure itself. We do find people have things catch from time to time, and then it burns the deck itself. So again, under the very strict requirements that we were talking about before, as long as it's very clear of the roof, very clear of the structure, very clear of the exterior railing, then I'm not as worried about it, but definitely never on a deck where you have something above you. That's always the concern. As heat rises, fire rises, and the last thing you want to do is catch your neighbor's balcony on fire or their deck on fire, because then you're going to have an angry neighbor, and it's very dangerous for you as well.
Understood. Okay. Thank you so much. Okay, so we were talking about bonfires and especially the importance of supervising kids around fires. In the past few years, there have been many reports across the state about young children and teenagers who were burned in fire pits, whether they accidentally fell in or maybe were throwing an accelerant on an already burning fire. So what should teens and adults know about safely managing a fire pit?
Well, this is a very important one for us, because obviously burn survivors and burn victims are a big concern in the fire service. But one of the things that I would say is make sure you keep trip hazards away. One of the things people like to throw the football around and the baseball around outside, nowhere near the fire. So you got to keep this as clear as possible. Like, again, keep at least 3 feet safety zone for kids. But on top of that, you want to make sure that We're not adding accelerant to bonfires. I know I've seen it before where people would just keep dumping stuff on over and over again, particularly once a fire is already lit. To make it bigger, they'll throw gasoline or some sort of flammable liquid on there. Very bad idea, because the fire wants to travel through the liquid back to the container once it catches. So obviously the consequences of that sort of behavior are severe. The thing I would recommend the most is make sure any kind of active movement is done a safe distance away from the fire. And again, anything, don't sit too close to the fire. Don't have anything you would trip over and fall into the fire. And then if the worst happens and someone actually catches fire, make sure that we're responding the way that we're supposed to. Stop, drop, and roll. Always go back to the basics. If you do have burns, make sure you run them under cold water, not ice, for at least 3 to 5 minutes. And if the symptoms persist after that, seek medical attention as soon as possible.
Thank you so much. Okay, so we have kind of touched on, we've touched on burning, big fires outside, fire pits, campfires. Is there anything specific about a campfire that we should keep in mind?
We talked about the distance of campfires. You want to keep them at least 25 feet from tents or anything like that. Definitely, they're a good thing to use to keep warm or even do some cooking, but you got to make sure that they're well attended. So again, never walk away from it. Make sure you have an area around the fire where there's no more leaves, branches, anything like that that could catch and spread the fire beyond its intended area. And then once again, part of attending a fire means you have some way to quickly extinguish it should something go wrong. Bucket of water, hose line, stuff like that. So and then make sure it's completely extinguished before you go to sleep, because obviously you don't want that fire burning while no one's conscious to take care of it.
Got it. All right, and then one more time, if someone's clothes were to catch on fire, one more time.
Stop, drop, and roll. It's one of the first things we ever learned about fire service, about fire safety, and one of the most important ones. And that's why we always bring it back to that.
Awesome. Thank you so much. You were so efficient. You answered all of my questions thoroughly. We've already made it through my whole list. So let me just double check, make sure there's nothing left in the chat. It looks like we don't have anything. If anybody has questions after the fact, please feel free. We have staff here on site that watch our social media, so we would love to answer any fire safety questions you have. But with that, this will conclude our program today. So thank you again, Mike and Sparky from Rockford Fire Department, for joining us today.
Thank you for having us.
And thank you again to our event sponsor, JC Restoration. If you guys would like any additional information or resources regarding fire safety or burn prevention, or if you just want to learn more about what we do here at the IFSA, please visit our website, ifsa.org. We'll link that on this video as well. And then if you want to join us for our next session, we'll be meeting on June 2nd, same place. We'll be here Facebook Live, and we'll be talking about scald prevention. If you do want to tune into that, make sure you check interested or going on the Facebook event page, so that way you receive reminders and notifications. But thank you again for joining us, Mike and Sparky, and for everybody tuning in on Facebook. We really appreciate it, and we hope you all have a safe grilling season.
Thanks, you too.
Thank you. Have a good one, guys.